Hey girl, Marissa here. You are listening to the Codependent Dummy podcast. As a young woman, you have been raised, reinforced, and rewarded for putting the needs of others above your own. Now, in your 20s, you're finding yourself exhausted, exasperated, and enveloped in shit relationships, especially the one you have with yourself. Codependency is a way of being where we put the feelings, wants, and needs of others above our own in an unconscious attempt to meet our own feelings, wants, and needs. Sorry to break it to you, sis, but that is not sustainable. This podcast is to help you undo all that so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. Let's get to it. Welcome, everyone, to the Codependummy podcast. This is your hostess, Marissa Escobar, and this week we are talking to Beth Klein. Beth is a licensed therapist specializing in helping young professional women get unstuck so that they can bring their lives back into alignment with their purpose, passions, and values. She sees people in person in her office in St. Paul, Minnesota, and works virtually with people residing in Minnesota and Wisconsin. Beth, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Hi, you're welcome. It's great to be on here.
Yes. All right. So the typical two, Beth, I'm curious, how do you conceptualize codependency?
Okay. So how I would define it is mainly when your sense of self-fulfillment or happiness depends on the physical or emotional comfort, I would say, of someone else. And a lot of times it's a loved one, but sometimes it's other people, like at work or, people in your friendships. And I guess in contrast, it would living your life in that way, it would be to live your life towards that living your values would be what would make you fulfilled and happy.
Right.
Because what happens is you end up living for other people's comfort ends up backfiring, and then you end up feeling kind of neglected, and also sometimes resentful, and then that's when kind of your anger kind of comes up. And I guess I've noticed then it'll surprise people. It's like, whoa, what? Like, I thought you liked this, I thought you were fine with this, and then it's like, no, I'm not. And I think sometimes in a person's development, they'll live that way for a while, and then they'll kind of realize that that isn't helpful, and then they'll kind of be very kind of almost defiant and very adamant. And it can be good, to kind of like, I'm owning myself, I'm for myself and this and that. But then I think I've seen, like, sometimes in divorces will happen because the person just wasn't really themselves, and now they are, and they're just like, but now they're like, won't even give it a chance anymore. They're just kind of like, I'm done, and I'm off on my own now.
Right.
And there's a lot of other things that can happen. I sometimes, I guess, some examples of how, and then I think another thing that can happen is that people, when people do this with their kids, it can limit the kids' ability. So they're trying to take, your happiness depends on their comfort, right? So if they're crying, if they're not happy, if something's wrong, then you have to fix it right now.
Right.
And so obviously when a newborn baby, you do have to fix it.
Yes.
But as they develop, the child needs to learn how to handle their own emotions and be able to sit with their emotions and feel sad and feel disappointed, is a big one. But if you swoop in and fix it, so even like with their friendships, you might swoop in and fix it by calling the parent and saying, we got to resolve this. And instead of mentoring the child to how can you fix it, and also even before that to um, help them identify their feelings. So say, oh, it sounds like you're really sad, or you're really disappointed that your friend did this. And that really, I know that hurts, and kind of sit with that a little bit with them, and then teach them, to get through it. And then say, okay, well, how here's some ideas I have for how you might fix this. And so, do that. And then they become a more independent adult in the long run. So, so that's a way that it can kind of hurt, someone. And I guess even with other adults. So if let's say your spouse has some insecurities or anxiety or something, and if you could always be fixing that too for them. So you could be saying, oh, well, I'll call and make the doctor's appointment for you, or I'll do this for you, or I'll call the relatives and say we can't come, or um and but then that person, it gets even worse, because now that person's now even more dependent on you. And so now you're now having, like, you're almost now required to do this stuff. And it gets you into kind of this bind, which is why it will lead to resentment sometimes.
Right. You said resentment, anger, feeling neglected
Yeah.
because you've just so much, like you said, self-fulfillment or happiness
Mm-hmm.
through others' comfort, and your comfort is just completely lost in that way of being.
Yeah. Right. And it can actually keep you busy to take care of other people's comfort, enough that you can avoid then you can avoid your own needs for a while, and you can feel kind of fulfilled for a while, but then it ends up catching up to you.
Right.
And I guess I work a lot with anxiety, and I work with OCD, and so I see a lot of things as fear-based, and avoidance-based. And because when I guess in some ways, taking care of other people's needs can be a way for you to avoid your own needs, or your own hurts, or your own, I guess, goals. Like, let's say you want, your goal, you could say, oh, well, I really would like to do this, but this person really needs me, so I think I can justify it by just taking care of them. But then at some point in life, I think what happens is people then will start to become, they'll, I don't know. Sometimes I think it's when you get, like, later in life, like middle aged maybe, or at a point where maybe your kids leave home, or your kids are teenagers, they don't need you as much, and you start thinking, well, wait a minute, I haven't done anything for myself, and life's short, and it doesn't, not, and then they think, well, then they start getting resentful. And sometimes people will then learn from that, and they will take care, they will say, okay, well, I'm going to start doing some things, and they'll see a therapist, or they'll, talk to a good friend that helps them with that.
So before we discuss the arc of a
Okay.
potential codependent, no,
Yeah.
this is great. I am curious. So how you define it?
Okay.
When one seeks self-fulfillment, happiness, through the comfort of others, and through friends, or a parent with their child, or between partners. Second question.
Okay.
Can you share with us about aspects of codependency in your own life?
Yeah. So I guess one of the things I thought of was that I guess one of the other things I wanted to mention is that this can be conditioned. So like it can kind of, throughout your childhood or life, you might find that codependency being a solution. And if not guided in other ways, you might then, that's how maybe it starts getting created. Um, so as a child, I moved around a lot. So I moved, gosh, let's see, I moved in kindergarten. I moved in, let's see, 7th grade, 11th grade, and then even before kindergarten a couple times, but those were the main ones. And when I would move, I would have to then make new friends. And so what I would do is, I felt like I had to be really accommodating and careful when I made new friends or when I was at the school, because I would needed people to like me enough to want to be with me. And if I asserted my own needs or rocked the boat, then they may not ask me to do something, anymore. And so um I would just go along with them and do what they wanted to do. And then I would, not really get my own needs met. And it really wouldn't be things I valued, wouldn't be things I liked to do. I remember specifically in high school, um, I would do, I made a friend that, um, and I just did things like we would drive around in our car all the time. And I didn't like doing that. It was boring. It was not the kind of thing I like to do, but I just did it because I would, because I was like, oh, I better be nice, and if I say, oh, let's do something else, she might not want to do it and might get mad at me. And so then I, would be left without any friends. And so I had to kind of be that way. And so, what's interesting is because I moved around a lot, I was comfortable with moving it in a way, because I knew how to do it. So I knew how to make friends this superficial way. Um, but then I did move, you know, kind of several times after high school when I was on my own. And but then I kind of was conditioned to meeting friends that way, and kind of always like, you must be careful. You must always have to, you must always be accommodating. Don't rock the boat. And so, then then there's that arc, where you get disappointed, and then you kind of end up getting resentful.
Were
Um,
you disappointed and resentful?
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and I was disappointed and resentful. Um, and I would kind of like, I think when I got to with that in that situation, when I got disappointed and resentful, I just kind of go off on my own then. I'm like, no, so I'd realize, yeah, this isn't right, but then I would be kind of on my own, and I wouldn't work hard um, I wouldn't push the limits with people to see if they would still like me after I did assert myself. So, but then what's interesting is that in college, I had roommates, and I went to a college where they assigned roommates, and I lucked out, and I had really close roommates. And I was able to kind of repair that by having really close roommates, where you can't be accommodating all the time when you live with the person, because at least for me, because you have certain needs. I mean, you have to get your sleep and all these things. So I was able to kind of test that out, but it wasn't always easy, because I was maybe more reactive than because of my fear, I think, of setting limits. I don't know if that makes
What
sense.
comes to mind for a need that you did assert?
Um, Let me think. Oh gosh, I can't think of. I guess in college, I guess I know I'm not able to think of a college example, but I think more prominent examples are so then that took me into like intimate relationships, kind of being too accommodating, possibly. So I think there was, situation where my eyes were opened, and I kind of realized that, and with therapy, I got therapy,
Mm.
and I realized that, I think there was um, a thing where somebody, or the person wasn't coming home. They weren't telling me they weren't going to come home on right after work, and then they would stay out, and then I would be there and be like, hey, this is a Friday night. This is supposed to be fun and whatever, and I get
Mm.
resentful. And then the therapist was the one who recommended that, what, have an alternate plan, and if they don't come home, just go do it. Go do something. Go do what you want. Do so, don't sit and wait and get stew and get angry and angry and angrier. Um, and because then I would get so angry that, then when they did come home, it was like all hell would break loose, right?
Mm.
And I would yell and get mad, and so that was kind of it was interesting that that wasn't an automatic eye opener for me. I needed a therapist to tell me that, or to suggest that. And then yeah, and then I think after that, I became more assertive in my relationships.
Mm.
And then I think sometimes I think I would go too far then, so I'd go too far and be too demanding, right?
Do
And
you
then
remember a specific time doing that?
um yeah, I mean, demanding in terms of um like I guess, is a bit more of a general, like, critical. So like, um almost noticing every kind of mistake and then being critical of it.
Mm.
Um, but then looking back, it was probably because I wasn't, doing my own needs. I was paying too much attention to what he was doing and not enough attention to what I wanted. Um, and the
Right. So
resentment.
this
Yeah.
interesting balance where you're the accommodating, right? Not
Mhm.
making any waves, friend,
Right.
roommate, partner. You go to therapy and you learn, oh, I don't have to wait until they come back to go out and have fun. I can say, I'd like you to be here at this time so we can go out together. And if you're not, I'm gonna go to the movies by myself.
Hmm.
And also, right, so somewhere more in the middle between accommodating and demanding. But then
Hmm.
yeah, you sense somehow you really flip the switch where you were still hyper focused on someone else, just in
Yeah.
this opposite way.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah. It's almost in wanting them to change, and then if they change, then I would be better. I'd
Mm.
feel better.
Right.
Um, and yeah. And so I think there is kind of like I don't know if it's a natural kind of a path, but you're codependent, like you're doing things based on the other person, and then you like realize that your needs aren't being met, and then you kind of get resentful and kind of like almost mad at them, like, why, that they did it. You kind of did it.
Mm.
I mean, you did it. They had a part in it too, but you did it. And
Right.
and then you get mad and resentful, and then you start realizing um that you can't, that's not okay. So then you start doing, you kind of morph into this realization, I guess. That's, I think, what happened with me. And I got a divorce when I was, my kids were 4 and 5. And then in other relationships, then I would be kind of um like kind of demanding right off the boat. And I'd be like, almost too much. Like, you
Mm.
need to be this way, and whatever. Um, and that doesn't work. But it's almost like I had to get to that point where I had to, I guess, me personally, had to kind of take charge of myself
Mm.
in that way before I realized that I could do both. I could be kind and accepting and take care of myself at the same time. You know what I mean?
And have needs where you rely on others.
Yeah.
Right. So codependent, accommodating,
Yeah.
and then you were independent and demanding
Yes.
and trying to find, right? You said, hopefully it happens naturally. I don't know if it does.
Right.
This interdependent, like you said, taking charge of myself and a healthy reliance on others.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah. And I
How did
think
you get there?
yeah, that's a good question. I think that comes with, you know, self-esteem. So underlying things I think in codependency are self-esteem, low self-esteem, and can be, I guess, low self-esteem, and also fear, like fear-based. Um, and then like I said conditioning too, I think. But
Mhm.
um so yeah, so working on my self-esteem and in working on my self-esteem, learning my so I did a personality learned my personality type, my Myers-Briggs personality type. And that was helpful because I have a low like percentage of the population personality. And so that it made me kind of feel like good that I like no wonder I don't always fit in kind of thing.
Mm.
And but that I am valuable just like anyone else, and like and that. And then also um going figuring out what do I like? What do I personally like to do? Who am I? And exploring some things, experimenting by trying some things, um, that to see if it fits, see if I like it.
Wow.
And so I had some experiences. It was interesting, and I guess I kind of came across this with a group, some friends that I met. Um, was like doing some things with I went sailing and scuba diving and things, and
Mm.
through that I learned that I am way more adventurous than I realized. And I
Wow.
was kind of being a homebody mom, like, and my partner was that way, so my husband was that way, more of a homebody, so I was being more of a homebody. Didn't have a lot of experiences growing up that were that adventurous. So I realized that, oh my gosh, so I realized who I am. This is, I'm this kind of person. So that I did more of those things. And then you start kind of living your values, living what you like. Um, and then that actually being single was really good for me in that way because I met a
Mm.
lot of people, um, because I didn't want to, on the weekends, I didn't have my kids. I didn't want to be alone. So I would
Wow.
stretch myself, go out and meet people. And then as I met more people, I discovered new activities and new things. Um, and then I think that definitely helped my self-esteem is to understand who I am and what I like. Um,
Mhm.
and then because the other thing I think people do is and what I did, obviously, what I was saying as in high school is you do the activities that your friends want to do, to make them happy, but then you're not satisfied necessarily because you can't always find people that like to do the things you do, and so sometimes you have to find a group that likes to do those things or do it on your own. And so after I learned that I was more adventurous, that I liked that kind of stuff, I went off. Um, I did a triathlon, and I met this group of triathlon people. And so then they introduced me to like rock climbing, and so then it was kind of, but my friends, like my best friends, they didn't do that stuff. And
Right.
so I just would, so they would support me in doing it, and I'd be like, I'm sorry, I'm busy this weekend. I can't, I'm doing this thing because I really like it. And so then you kind of learn, I guess. So I learned from doing, I guess.
Wow.
And yeah, so I
Yeah.
think that's key.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Wow. So you found out how adventurous you are.
yeah. And so during I think during, so that's one part of me, that I found out the things I valued. I also volunteered at a church that I went um, to kind of figure out who I am and what I like to do and what I value, right? And I did a career change and became a counselor too, which was part of that exploration of what I value. Um,
Wow.
yeah. Um, I think, and I mentioned fears before, but I think that's a big part of what keeps people from doing things. Um, it can be scary to do. It can be scary to do new things. It can be scary to even, I don't know if in your area you have this app called a meetup
Hmm.
app, and it has a lot of activities that, and I think it's a good app for people who like to do unique things because you can find different other people that like to do it too. Um, and so, but it's scary to go to one of those. It can be scary to show up and not know those five people other people that are there, know what they're going to be saying or doing. Um, it can be, scary to take scuba diving lessons, which is what I did. Or it can be scary so a lot of times people will just kind of, that fear can be so strong that they just don't, I'm not going to do it. It's
Right.
easier to just kind of be here and be lonely and depressed than it is to go out and do something. So I had a lot of, that's where a therapist really helped,
Mm,
me, is I had a therapist to encourage me to go out and, um, face those fears.
right.
Um, and there were other people, there was friends that would do that for me. And so, yeah.
Mm. And the disappointment. I know a lot of my patients trying to build relationships. They do
Yes.
go to those meetups. They do go on those outings. They don't connect with anyone.
Ugh,
And then it's screw it.
right,
Why should I go?
right.
What would you say to the codependummy trying to do that? Who's feeling discouraged and disillusioned by the fantasy of
Ah.
of meetups.
Oh, of meetups. Oh my goodness. Yeah, the fantasy. Oh, um, what I would say what I would say is you've got to start somewhere. That's one thing I would say. And the it's there's a lot of networking that goes on with making friends, just like there is in business, right? Um, so I would say you have to start somewhere. So there were times when I would meet people that I knew weren't really my people, but I would do things with them anyway. And then as I did things with them, then we would meet other people, and then we would naturally, separate into and be with the people we really clicked more with.
Mm,
And so you kind of start with, you start somewhere, so that you have someone maybe to go with, or and then you go to it and maybe you trade off and you say, hey, how about if we go to your favorite thing together, and then you go to mine, and then we meet, people that way. We help each other with, with our anxiety or whatever, meet the people, and then you kind of almost like stepping through it, almost like you don't, I guess, I don't you don't turn away the people that aren't like your exact match in terms of
right,
friendships.
right.
You keep and also the other thing is, I think, what's helpful is to see it as you're not only receiving, you're also giving, I guess. And
Mm,
being careful with the codependent, but you're also
Yeah.
the other people at the meetup are probably feeling the same way as you are.
Mm.
So they're probably feeling like maybe disappointed, or maybe worried, or maybe not connecting. So if you kind of focus on like, I can be helpful to these people too. I don't have to just worry about myself. And I don't know, kind of, yeah. But I see I see why it can be hard with a codependent, because you
It's
don't want to,
very hard.
you don't,
Yeah.
but you don't, I guess the difference is you don't stay there. You don't stay in that place where you're only worrying about them. What you're doing is you're noticing them in the moment, and kind of teaming up with them in a way. Like, yeah, we're all kind of here. We're all kind of here that, and we don't know anybody. None of us know anybody, and we're just at this meetup group because we have no one to go to these things with. So here we are, like,
Mhm.
and let's try to figure this out. Um, so kind of maybe being more open and vulnerable too, I guess, is the other thing.
Mm.
I'm really keen on vulnerability, and how you people try if they hide who they are. Um, but you're probably a lot more likable than you think you are, and
Mm.
being vulnerable is very likable. And so, saying that maybe I'm kind of nervous to someone, you know, maybe picking one person in the meetup group and saying, "Gosh, I'm kind of nervous. Are you?"
Mhm.
Or, "Gosh, you know, I'm not sure what to do. This seems kind of boring or whatever. Are you?" And kind of being a little more vulnerable
Mhm.
with the people.
Well, I also hear like trying to really connect with one person at least, right? So instead of just
Yeah.
kind of wandering and meandering in a group, floating,
Oh,
you're
right.
you're saying try and like touch, like at least
Yeah.
seek safety. Not
Yes.
sure, not sure. We can't necessarily tell if people are emotionally safe immediately, but try to seek safety and potentially with that person admit, be vulnerable. I'm nervous, or this is my first time. I don't know what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Balance giving and receiving,
Yep.
and you got to start somewhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so hard because I know I've been to things with
Yeah.
low attendance,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll keep going because I feel bad for the host, right? Because
Oh,
I'm such
yeah.
a codependummy. Yeah, and I like try and help out, and then all of a sudden I'm volunteering.
Mm.
Like,
Right.
oh. So everyone, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, first, you're more likable than you think. I love that.
Yep.
And practicing discernment when it comes to being vulnerable, balancing giving and receiving. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you do have to start somewhere.
Yeah. And don't don't go to the group because you feel bad for the host. Because right? Because I'm thinking too is there's a lot of jumping to conclusion that goes on, right? Making assumptions.
Right.
Because unless the host told you, I am so I just hate this, and I like am so worried that I hate every time they show up and there's only one person, and da, da. Unless they tell you that, you don't really know. You're kind of assuming that they're going to feel bad. Well, how do you know that they don't just love the fact that no one shows up sometimes? That they can just do the activity by themselves, or they can
Right.
go home, or so you don't. So I guess that's the other thing too, is I think people tend to make assumptions, and so I try to, I'm like, try to check it out, kind of try to find out, maybe go up to the host and say, hey, so what's it like when no one shows up, or something, and then find out what they say,
Right.
and you don't know. Um, which I think too, well, I think codependent, like parents will do that. I mean, I can see ways that they do that, make assumptions, and like with their with, let's say, rescuing their teenager.
Well, just to summarize,
Okay.
everyone, this is
Yes.
Beth's wisdom on finding balance, interdependence, making meaningful friendships and connections after being too accommodating, too
Yeah.
demanding. But yeah, I think codependency is a very lonely existence. And so this is Beth's wisdom on how to make new, healthier connections starting out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
yeah. Right. Thank you for summarizing that, because that is, yeah, that's kind of what I'm also saying. And because I think when you say it that way, I also think of that um that practice, like I believe you need to practice. Um and um if you practice and you do it enough times, it starts becoming more comfortable.
Right.
So if you go into the situation with the intention that I'm going to, let's say when I'm at this event, I'm going to say one thing, talk about one thing, need that I have, so it might be, you go to the event and you say, um, I would like to go, I guess it depends on the event. I'm trying to think. So let's say you go to a picnic and you have a need to go for a walk. So you might, kind of challenge yourself before you go, that I'm going to set one need. So you're there and you think, oh, I really want to go for a walk. And then you make a point to then ask someone, hey, could you go for a walk with me? Or you say, I'm going to go for a walk. And then you challenge yourself to do it. And then after you do those things that you challenge yourself to do, you're going to feel really good afterwards. You're not going to feel good necessarily before or when you do it. It might be scarier than really scary, but you're going to feel better after. Um, and then it's going to be easier next time to do it.
Yeah.
And so, and then that goes into the whole fear thing and feeling the fear, and not avoiding it. And how there's ways to kind of to help yourself with fear, facing fears.
Right.
And I think
Okay.
I've heard yeah, go ahead.
No. I just for everyone listening, I sense we're spontaneously focusing on how to make friends. That's
Yep.
that's what the focus
Yes.
has been, and I sense continue will be. So I had some other questions, but yeah, I do
Oh,
want
great.
to. No. Like, how do we face the fear? Like you said, when trying to make new connections.
Yeah. So the fear in that case would be like anticipatory fear. So I'm afraid, but you may not know why you're afraid, or you may know. So if you could kind of go down to the core fear, you might find that your core fear is, rejection, or finding out that you're not, you're being lonely.
Well,
And
let's try and work with. So you work with young professional women, right? Maybe one comes in.
Yep.
She has a very similar life experience to yours, Beth. She has been accommodating in friendships and relationships. Maybe she just broke up with someone or moved to a new city, right? She's comfortable moving, and she's trying to make meaningful friendships. And yet she just has this history of unreciprocating, thankless, boundaryless friendships.
Mm.
Okay, so she comes and you challenge her and you
Mm.
say, meet up, go to meetups. And she says, like, I want to, or I wanted to go this past week. I planned to go to a picnic, a foodie picnic, and I couldn't do it. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
well, how come? So
Mm.
what do you sense her core fear? What do you sense she would say?
Um, I would sense she would say, I was just too scared. I just, how come? Well, I was just too scared. I couldn't do it. And so what I
Mhm.
would do is I would work with her on so try to tap into that feeling and where does she feel that in her body? So I think the more in tune with your body and where, in your feelings, because what happens, I think, with fear is the trigger. So there's something that triggers the fear, and then it tends to go right to your body and a feeling in your body. And so really that feeling is what's scaring you the most, is that your body's scaring you.
Hmm.
So if I were to, let's say I'm scared of spiders and I look at a spider, and I'm like, oh, I'm scared. Well, if I were to kind of concentrate on my body, do a body scan and find out, where in my body do I feel it? I, with practice, that might take practice, I might notice that I feel a tightness in my chest.
Right.
And so that tightness in my chest is really uncomfortable. And so that is really, so I almost think that is really what I'm scared of. I'm not scared of the spider. I'm scared of that feeling in my body. I want it to go
Right.
away. Ick. I don't like it. So if you can notice that and notice that it's really just a feeling in my body, it's not, it feels like I might die from it, but I'm not going to. Logically, I'm not going to die from it. That doesn't make any sense. And I can kind of get used to that feeling. Then I can face the spider next time and go, oh, there's that feeling. Oh, yeah, I hate it. And then each time I feel that, since I'm getting used to that feeling, it gets easier and easier. And pretty soon I don't feel it anymore, or I don't notice it when I see the spider. So
Hmm.
similarly, thinking of going to that
Exposure.
exposure. Yeah.
That's the fancy term, everybody. We'd say you just keep exposing, like, I don't know why we call it exposure, but exposing oneself to what you fear the most.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so your patient comes, I was too scared. You're like, okay, let's tap into scared.
Mhm.
And she says, like, oh, it's in the pit of my stomach. I thought about going and oh, like I felt nauseous and I just decided not to go and then I felt better.
Yep. Yeah. And if you, and how that works is, whenever when you make a decision, um, I guess uh, it, a part of your brain is kind of, so I see it as you have this part of your brain that kind of follows along with whatever you're doing. So when you're scared, this part of your, and you solve the fear by avoiding, then this part of your, this follow part of your brain will say, oh, okay. So when I'm scared, she's scared, I need to avoid it. And that's going to be better. So then you start, if you do it, avoid enough, then you start requiring. So it's called conditioning. So you start requiring you to avoid it. And if you don't, the fear is even worse. So the fear gets worse and worse and worse. And so that's where, so then you have to the exposure is to go, backwards, like kind of back that up and now expose yourself to those things to retrain your brain that it is okay, that it isn't dangerous, but you might have to do it slowly because now you've you've avoided so long that you've gotten yourself so scared that you might have to go slowly. So it might be that you might create what we call a hierarchy, and where you might start with a smaller thing. So like a smaller, kind of rating, how scary is this? So going to that event might be a 10 out of 10, and that's really, really hard. But maybe you could find something that's like a 4 or 5, kind of in the middle, that's hard enough, that's going to help your brain learn, but not too hard, and do that first. So it might be, me as a therapist, maybe we could go somewhere together, and I'd have you, like go to a store. Let's say it's scary for you to go up to a clerk at the grocery store. You know, maybe we go there together, and I say, okay, go on up, and you come back and we process it, or you go by yourself. That's your homework, like to go to, grocery store, if that's the 5. It could be many,
Well,
many.
I'm trying to think, like, one of your patients, like, she's a young professional. She's trying to make new friends. She couldn't go to the meetup.
Right.
She wants meaningful friendships. What do you sense like a 4 or 5 would be for her? I just picture her like a social
Mm-hmm. Like social anxiety, kind of social.
no, I mean she's codependent, and
Yep.
she's trying to make these
Oh,
friendships. Yeah, I'm curious, like what
that's
a
right. The
4 or
codependent.
5 would be for her.
Yeah. Well, okay. So a codependent might be that a 4 or 5 for her might be to assert herself with a current friend. So like, maybe there's a current friend that she would like to say that on Saturday night she wants to go to this restaurant. And maybe that could be a 4 or 5. If not, maybe something's even easier, something else with that friend. So even saying, no, I want to talk at 5 o'clock, not at 4,
Right.
or something like that. And so to try that, and then likely the friend is going to be fine, with it. If they're not, and then what's going on there? Right? I mean, with a friend, but it's likely that a true friend is not going to, nitpick.
See, but
They might.
That's the rub with codependence, right? That's what keeps us not asserting or not going places, because our whole life has been nitpicking and or the terror of nitpicking.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
so
Well, when you say their whole, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just with this made up person. So she's one of your patients. She's a young professional. She's new to the area, trying to make new friends. And yeah, maybe she's even been to a couple meetups and has been disappointed and discouraged. So, you challenge her to go to another one, and she doesn't. She doesn't want to go. She doesn't want to be unfulfilled, disconnected, disillusioned again. And you're like, well, what are you afraid of? Like, what's keeping you? And yeah, maybe she's too scared of, dying lonely. And okay, so where is the fear? So you help her tap into her body through a body scan. And you recognize, like, okay, maybe going to a foodie picnic and not connecting, that's too much. That would be too painful. That's a 10 out of 10. So a 4 or 5 would be, yeah, maybe, hopefully she has friends from other places and she's asserting with them, like, I actually really need you right now. I'm getting used to this new city, and I need to talk to you every week at 4 on Fridays. And that's like, oh, like, can she do that? But yeah, I think it sounds so obvious, and going to meetups and setting these boundaries, it's so logical. But for codependence, like, those are the last 2 things I would
Mm-hmm.
ever want to do.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that goes along with this is your knowing your value. Doing some values work. So understanding what really what makes your heart sing. What is it that you, if, and I guess that sometimes it's hard for you to figure out what do you love. If there was nobody around, everybody would just do whatever you wanted, and everybody would, set this up, where they would, kind of a fictitious situation where you could do whatever you want. What would you want to do? What would you, or when you're, if imagine when you're 80 years old and you're looking back on your life, what would make you feel proud that how you were, you
Yeah.
know? And so you really tap into and spend some time with that. And so, because that's your incentive. That's where you're like, your incentive to doing these things that are so painful and it hurts your chest or whatever. And you kind of ask the question too, are you willing to feel all these icky feelings so that you can get here, to this happy state of values, where you're living your values. And so it's kind of the willingness question. And then, you know, and if you, what I do is in my office, I'll work on it with people, like even just right in the office. It's like maybe there's something that we could do that would be a little scary that could challenge them. So maybe telling me something, or we could do role play, like role play being at this event and going up to someone, um, and things like that.
Right. Sending
So
that text to that friend.
yeah.
I love this though. So you're like, okay, she's all discouraged. She's terrified of sending this text. She's terrified. Well, she's not terrified, but she's just, it's been so painful not connecting with people. And you're like, okay, let's focus on values.
Mm-hmm.
If you could do anything, like what, if no one was watching, if there were no limits, no judgment, what would you be doing?
Mm-hmm.
How would you be spending your time when
Mm-hmm.
you're 80? What do you want to look back on
Mm-hmm.
and and remember fondly with
Mm-hmm.
what you did with your life?
Mm-hmm.
And then this willingness question, are you willing to face the fear, to face the discomfort, to navigate the discouragement on crappy meetup experiences, to cultivate that valued life?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Good.
And there isn't anything that says it's not going to necessarily be easy or fun. But when you do it and you get to the other side of it, that's your reward. But you have to start experiencing that in order for you to know that to trust it, I guess. Like you have to have some successful experiences to know that, oh my gosh, this might be possible.
Right.
you know and so that's why you start you started at a place where you can be successful, so that you can feel that success, because success and pride, like that feeling of pride, so you have the feeling of fear. Well, there's also that wonderful feeling of pride, of self, pride, proud, that, not the negative
Yeah,
pride.
self-pride.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have self-love, we have
Yeah, self-love.
it's self-pride.
Yeah.
I'm proud.
And then if you have friends that are also doing it and they can call you a badass or something, and like,
Mhm.
hey, woohoo, look at us. That's even better, because it's like you're kind of cheering each other on. And that's where not everyone needs that. You can do that alone, but it's kind of fun to have the social part of it too. And so that I might also find a group, some friends that are also working on it.
Right.
And then they're also doing that, maybe, um, so you can cheer each other on.
Mhm. Yeah. All right. So I sincerely appreciate earlier when we were like, well, how do you make connections? How do you start making meaningful relationships? And you're like, well, you got to start somewhere. And then right now you said like, it's not easy or fun.
Yeah.
Just know it's not easy or fun. And yet, right, this interdependent arc where we're trying to travel, there is success, self-pride, and true that connection. We're truly seeking the reciprocating, thankful, boundary filled and healthy interdependent connections.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the vulnerability, the vulnerability piece to but that's scary. So that's another one of those fears that you're facing. So partly why you might not want to go to this event is because you're afraid to be vulnerable. You're afraid to put yourself out there, be seen, all those things.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll have to have you back to talk about
yeah, really.
But I do appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom, Beth's wisdom on making connections. Yeah. And if this is resonating, if listeners want to hear more about you, where can they go?
They can go to my website. It's www.fireflycounselingmn.com. Go to my website, contact, do the contact form, set up a consultation, email me, whatever, I'm on Instagram too, Beth.Klein.therapist.
Okay. So, I will put links to all that in the show notes.
And I'd love to connect. Sounds great.
All right. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you guys next week.
All right. Bye-bye.
Hey, girl. It's Marissa again. I'm not like a regular podcaster. I'm a cool podcaster, right? Thank you for listening and staying till the end. You can find me on Instagram at Therapy with Marissa. Email me, marissa@codependummy.com. Check out codependummy.com for more information on the show. And baby girl, a subscribe, rating, and review would be much appreciated. Till next time, I want you to remember, if you are feeling unseen, I see you. If you are feeling unheard, I hear you. And if you think that you don't matter, know that you matter to me. I want you to go out there so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. And now, the disclaimer. Girl, this is not therapy and I am not your therapist. This podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regards to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, publisher, or guests are rendering any legal, clinical, or other professional service. If you want or need a professional, please find one.